Hi. So let's start a topic which is ratio. This is a part of chapter 1 in CA Foundation and CMA Foundation. Yeah. So before we start ratio, we might be wondering, sir, what is ratio? So basically, ratio is a comparison between two or more quantities of the same kind by division. Yeah. So if I have two or more different quantities and I want to compare them, I can express it in the form of ratio. So what do we mean by that? Let's say Ram has 2 kg of apple and Shyam has 5 kg of apple. So if I want to compare these two different pieces of information, I can express it in the form of ratio, and the ratio will become 2 is to 5, where 2 denotes the quantity of apple Ram has with himself, and 5 denotes the quantity of apple that Shyam has with himself. Okay, so that's ratio. Now let's talk about what do we call these terms. So the 2 that we can see is known as antecedent, and the 5 that we can see is known as consequent. Consequent, and antecedent. So the first term is known as antecedent, and the second term is known as consequent. Okay. So now that we have known what is ratio, it is generally expressed in the form of division. So 2 is to 5 is nothing but 2 upon 5. The first term we call it as antecedent. The second term we call it as consequent. Let us move to some few properties of ratio. Okay. So first property. Generally, both the terms of a ratio can be multiplied or divided by the same non-zero number. So in the above example, I had 2 by 5. So it doesn't matter if I multiply it by 10 in both the with both the antecedent or consequent, I will still have the same answer. So 20 is to 5 is same as 2 is to 5. Doesn't make any difference. So if I'm multiplying both the antecedent as well as consequent, in this case, if I'm multiplying 10 with both the numerator as well as denominator, then I get the same number. Okay. So one thing that we need to note is that it should be non-zero, because if you multiply it by 0, then the entire thing becomes 0. So whatever I'm multiplying or whatever I'm dividing, it has to be a non-zero number. Okay. So moving to the second property, generally ratios are expressed in its lowest form. So just now we wrote 20 upon 50. So this is not the lowest form. I can further simplify it. If I simplify it, it will become 0, 0 cut off, and it will become 2 upon 5. So generally, whenever I'm expressing anything in the form of ratio, I will simplify it. I will express it in the lowest form. Let me take another example. Okay, let's say Ram has got 10 kg of apple, whereas Sham has got 45 kg of apple. So in the ratio form, it will become 10 upon 45. I can further simplify it. It will become 2 upon 9. So does this 2 upon 9 means that Ram now has 2 kg of apple and Sham now has 9 kg of apple? No, it doesn't mean that. So 2 upon 9 is what I can express as the quantity of apples with Ram and Sham. It means that in total they have 11 parts of apple. 2 plus 9, that gives us 11. So they have in total 11 parts of apple, and out of the 11 part, Ram has 2 parts and Sham has 9 parts. This is what it means. It doesn't mean that Ram has 2 kg and suddenly Sham also has 9 kg, because we started off with the example that Ram has 10 kg and Sham has 45 kg. So we generally express it in the form of in the lowest form. Okay. Third property is that the order of ratio is important. So it's like saying 2 is to 5 is the same as 5 is to 2. But no, it is not the same. So the order of ratio, how I am writing the antecedent, how I am writing the consequent, the order of these two things matters. Okay. So 2 is to 5 is not the same as 5 is to 2. Okay. Moving to the next one, ratio exists only between quantities of the same kind, and their units must be the same. So I cannot compare the income of a carpenter with the age of a student. So the income of a carpenter might be like 20,000. The age of a student might be like 17 years. So I cannot compare these two. There will not exist any ratio between these two. And also the units must be of the same, which means if the income of the carpenter is 20,000 rupees and that of a chartered accountant is, let's say, 2 lakh rupees. So again, I cannot compare these two things. Sir, what is the problem? It is both expressed in the form of income or rupees only. But if we look at the units, it is 20,000. The units here is thousands and the unit here is lakh. So either I will convert this 2 lakhs into thousands form, or either I will convert this 20,000 into the lakh form. So if I have to express this two data in the form of a ratio, then it will become 20,000 upon 2 lakh. Now I am writing everything in the same unit. Now it is all in the unit of rupees, simply rupees. So I'll simply cut off 40 from here, 40 from here, 2 ones are, 2 tens are. So the ratio is 1 is to 10. And what does this 1 is to 10 tells us about? It tells that if the carpenter earn one part, the CA earn 10 parts. Or I can, or we can also interpret it in such a way that the salary of the chartered accountant is 10 times more than that of a carpenter. Right. Moving to the next one, if the ratio is given in the form of a mixed fraction or decimal, then we have to convert it into fraction form for smooth comparison. So let's say I have been given 1.2 is to 4.8. I have to compare. And easily we can say that, sir, 4.8 is bigger. But can you say that 4.8 is how much times bigger than 1.2? No, it will become quite difficult. So what I can do, I can write it 1.2 upon 4.8. I can simply multiply it by 10, both the numerator and denominator. So it will become 12 upon 48. Now simplifying it further, it will give me 1 is to 4. Okay. So if I have been given something in the decimal form, I can multiply the number, I can remove the decimal, and I can express it in the form of simple form. Now 1 is to 4 indicates that if the first part is 1 times, the second part will be 4 times. If the antecedent is 1, the consequent will be 4 times. And finally, the last property, if a quantity increases or decreases in the ratio A is to B, then the new quantity will be B by A of the original quantity. Okay. So let us assume the salary of Ram is rupees 10,000. And it has been given that his salary increases in the ratio 10 is to 15. Now the question is asking me, sir, what will be his new salary? So what I can say, the new salary is equals to 10,000 into just the inverse of this ratio, that is 15 upon 10, 1010. So it is 15,000. As simple as that. So if the Ram salary is 10,000 currently, his salary increases in the ratio 10 is to 5. What will be the new salary? Simply the inverse of this ratio. I will multiply it with the original data and I will get the new salary. The same thing with the decreases. Doesn't matter if the question asks me about increases or decreases, I will get the same thing. I'll do the same thing, I'll get the same answer. Okay. Now let's talk about different types of ratio. Okay. So if I have been given A is to B, then its inverse will become B is to A. If I have been given a ratio A is to B, let's say if I have been given a ratio 2 is to 3, its inverse will become 3 is to 2. Inverse का मतलब क्या होता है? उल्टा हो जाना. ठीक है? And also I can say that if I have been given two different ratios, let's say 2 is to 3 and 4 is to 5, then the compound ratio will become 2 into 4 upon 3 into 5. That will be 8 upon 15. So sir, basically compound ratio का मतलब क्या होता है? Compound ratio मतलब I am simply multiplying these two ratios, nothing else. Okay. Let's talk about duplicate ratio. So if I have been given a ratio A is to B, its duplicate will become A square is to B square. Okay. So a ratio compounded on itself is known as duplicate ratio. If I have a ratio 2 is to 3, its duplicate ratio will become 4 is to 9. Simply 2 ka square and 3 ka square. Okay. Similarly, let's talk about triplicate ratio. If I have been given a ratio A is to B, its triplicate will become A cube is to B cube. That means अगर ratio मेरे पास 2 is to 3 होता है, इसका triplicate क्या हो जाता है? 2 का cube that is 8, 3 का cube that is 27. Moving on, what is subduplicate ratio? If I have been given a ratio A is to B, then it's सब डुप्लीकेट, जैसे डुप्लीकेट में हम लोग स्क्वायर कर रहे थे, सब डुप्लीकेट में हम लोग रूट ओवर करेंगे. इट्स सब डुप्लीकेट रेशियो will become root A is to root B. Okay. Let's say if I have been given a ratio 16 is to 25, what will be its sub-duplicate ratio? So 16 का root over कितना होता है? 4. 25 का root over कितना होता है? 5. So its sub-duplicate ratio will become 4 is to 5. Similarly, there is something known as sub-triplicate ratio. If I have been given A is to B, इसका sub-triplicate क्या हो जाएगा? A का cube root is to B का cube root. Okay. So let's say I have been given 8 is to 27. So what will be its sub-triplicate ratio? 8 का cube root. 8 का cube root होता है 2. 27 का cube root ये होता है 3. So the sub-triplicate ratio of A is to B will become 2 is to 3. Moving on to commensurable ratio. A ratio A is to B, इसको commensurable ratio कब बोला जाता है? If both A and B are in integer form. For example, 2 is to 3, 4 is to 5, 8 is to 27, 4 is to 9, 16 is to 25, 8 is to 15, 2 is to 3, 3 is to 2. All of these examples are commensurable ratio. Why? Because यहाँ पे both antecedent as well as consequent दोनों ही मेरा integer है. On the other hand, we have something known as incommensurable ratio. What is incommensurable ratio? ये वो रेशियो है जो कि a is to b के फॉर्म में है, बट यहाँ पे इसको मैं इंटीजर्स की तरह एक्सप्रेस नहीं कर सकता. सर, कैन यू गिव मी एन एग्जांपल? द एग्जांपल कैन बी रूट 2 is to root 3. Here, root 2 is not an integer. Root 3 is not an integer. So that is incommensurable ratio. Then, in a ratio A is to B, if A is greater than B, then we call it as a greater inequality. And if A is less than B, then we call it as a lesser inequality. For example, in the ratio 2 is to 3, सिंस यहाँ पे 2 छोटा है 3 बड़ा है, ये क्या हो जाएगा? ये हो जाएगा मेरा लेसर इनइक्वालिटी. Similarly, in the ratio 3 is to 2, since 3 here is bigger than 2, I can say it as a greater inequality. Okay. And finally, the last part of this thing, that is continued ratio. Okay. So what is continued ratio? Let's say I have Ram's salary as 10,000 rupees, Shyam's salary as 15,000 rupees, and Ghanshyam's salary as 20,000 rupees. So if I want to express or if I want to compare more than two data at the same time, then I call it as a continued ratio. Okay. So what I can do, I can write 10,000 is to 15,000 is to 20,000. Now I can see that all of these things are divisible by 5,000. So if I cut 10,000 by 5,000, I will get 2. If I cut 15,000 by 5,000, I will get 3. And if I cut 20,000 by 5,000, I will get 4. So what I can say, the ratio of the salary ratio of Ram, Shyam and Ghanshyam are in the ratio 2 is to 3 is to 4. Okay, so that was some of the different types of ratio. Now let's do a question. So the question has asked me that the ratio of prices of two houses are in the ratio 16 is to 23. So I have house 1, I have house 2. The ratio of their prices are in the ratio 16 is to 23. Does that mean कि house 1 का price 16 rupees है और house 2 का price 23 rupees है? No, इसका मतलब वो नहीं. ठीक है, इसका मतलब ये है कि सर house 1 का price 16x होगा तो house 2 का price 23x होगा. Because we are multiplying it with anything. ऊपर नीचे कुछ भी मल्टीप्लाई करो, बात एक ही है. So if I assume that X is 1 crore, so I can say that the price of house 1 is 16 crore. And similarly, the price of house 2 is 23 crore. So it doesn't make any sense. Okay, doesn't matter. So 2 years later, so it has been given that the price of houses are in the ratio 16 is to 23. After 2 years, the first one's price increases by 10% and the second one's price increases by rupees 477. And the new ratio becomes 11 is to 20. Find the original prices of the two houses. Okay, fine. So let me assume that the price of house 1 is 16x and the price of house 2 is 23x. So according to the question, After 2 years, what is happening after 2 years? The price of house one increases by 10%. So I can say that the price of house one is currently 16x plus 10% of 16x. Fair enough. And that of the second house increases by rupees 477. So the price of the second house now is 23x plus rupees 477. And this new ratio is equals to 11 upon 20. I hope it is clear. समझ में आ गया हम लोग को, ठीक है? So now let's simplify it. So it will become 16x plus 10% of 16x will become 1.6x. Okay. Upon 23x plus 477 is equals to 11 upon 20. So now it will become 17.6x upon 23x plus 477 is equals to 11 upon 20. Okay. Doing क्रॉस मल्टीप्लीकेशन, क्योंकि इसके आगे और कुछ रास्ता नहीं है, सो क्रॉस मल्टीप्लीकेशन करने से आई एम गेटिंग 20 times 17.6x is equals to 11 times 23x plus 477. Okay, so it will become how much? It will become 352x, and over here, after simplifying, 352x is equals to 253x plus 5247. Or I can say that 352x minus 253x is equals to 5247. It will give me 99x is equals to 5247. And finally, it will give me x as 53. So the value of x is 53. The value of x can be anything, but the value that is satisfying this equation is 53. So the question is asking me what was the original prices of the house. Okay, so the original prices, we assume that it is 16x upon 23x. So now I can say that the original price of house 1 is 16x or 16 times 53. This will give me how much? It will give me 848. And that of house 2 is 23x, 23 times 53. It will give me 1219. Okay, so that was the unit one, that is ratio. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope it was very informative. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much, everyone.